Welcome to the deep dive. We're going to jump straight into a topic well, it's becoming absolutely essential today for tackling those really complex questions, especially in areas like, say, the social sciences. You know, those questions where just looking at numbers, it doesn't quite give you the full story.
Right, but then just hearing individual stories, you feel like you're missing the broader trends.
Exactly. The reality we're trying to grasp is often messy. It's multifaceted.
Totally. And relying on just one viewpoint, whether it's stats or stories, it can leave you with a picture that's incomplete or maybe even, well, misleading.
And that is precisely where mixed methods research comes in. It's really designed for those times when one single approach just isn't going to cut it.
Like needing different tools for different parts of the job?
Yeah, think of it like needing both a telescope and a microscope to really understand something complex.
Ah.
Our guide for this deep dive is A Beginner's Guide to Mixed Methods Research. This was put together by Akademik Practices.
Yes. Good resource.
Really good. They've got some great stuff, and you can actually find more from them if you follow them on Instagram and Twitter.
Yeah, that guide's very practical. A great starting point.
It really is. So our mission here, kind of pulling from their guide, is to cut through the jargon, simplify the core ideas behind mixed methods.
Give some strategic pointers, maybe?
Exactly. Offer strategic tips for using it, and maybe help you steer clear of some of the common traps people fall into.
Good plan.
We want you to walk away understanding not just what it is, but really why it's such a powerful tool to have in your research arsenal.
And why that ability to handle complexity, to get that richer sort of multi-layered understanding is just so vital now, whatever field you're in.
Okay, let's unpack this then. At its heart, what exactly is mixed methods research? The guide defines it pretty clearly. It's about systematically integrating both quantitative and qualitative data collection and analysis techniques, not just side by side, but within a single study.
Yeah, the key word there is definitely integration. It's not like doing two totally separate studies and just, stapling the reports together at the end.
Right.
The main goal is to get these different types of data and analysis talking to each other. So the strengths of one method can kind of make up for the weaknesses of the other.
Like they're partners, really collaborating. And when they actually work together like that, you get a much more comprehensive, sort of multi-dimensional understanding than either method could give you on its own.
Absolutely.
The guide uses a really good example. Say you want to understand student satisfaction at a university.
Yeah, classic research question. If you only do a quantitative survey, you can measure how many students are satisfied, maybe get an average score, look at trends across demographics.
That tells you the what, the how much.
Exactly. But it doesn't tell you why.
Right. Why are they satisfied or dissatisfied? What specific things are driving those scores? Are there nuances just completely missing from the numbers?
And that's where you bring in the qualitative side. You could say, follow up with some students, do some in-depth interviews.
Get their stories.
Yeah, their stories, specific examples, the feelings they describe. That tells you the why and the how it actually feels part.
I see. So the survey gives you the wide-angle shot. The interviews give you the close-ups.
Exactly.
Put them together, and you don't just know, say, 75% are satisfied. You start to understand why it's 75%, what's bugging the other 25%, the real experiences behind those stats.
That blend is absolutely key, and it leads right into the next question. Why would you choose this? It's clearly more complex, right?
Yeah, it sounds like more work.
It often is. But the guide's pretty direct about it.
Yeah.
Some problems are just too intricate. You can't fully capture them with just numbers or just narratives.
Okay, so what's the big payoff then? Why go the mixed methods route?
Well, the guide points to several pretty powerful benefits. First, you gain a more holistic perspective. You're seeing the forest and the trees.
The pattern and the individual story that makes sense of it.
Exactly. You avoid that kind of tunnel vision you can get with just one method.
Okay, makes sense. What else?
Second, it inherently balances out the limitations. Quantitative gives you breadth, generalizability maybe, but can lack depth. Qualitative gives you that rich depth and detail, but you might not be able to generalize it widely.
So mixed methods gives you the potential for both, breadth and depth.
That's the goal. Third, it gives you a framework to actually compare and contrast different kinds of data systematically. Do your survey results confirm what people said in interviews? Or do they challenge it?
Oh, that comparison is interesting. It's not just having more data. It's having data that can sort of check itself within the same study.
Precisely. That tension, or maybe that alignment between the two, is incredibly insightful. And fourth, this can really boost the reliability and the credibility of your findings.
How so?
Well, when your numbers are backed up and explained by rich qualitative data, it just builds a much stronger case for your conclusions. It lets you answer the so what for your statistics by grounding them in real experiences.
Right. It makes the findings feel more solid, more trustworthy. Okay. That's a pretty compelling case for why you do it. Now, the guide doesn't just say mix things up, right? It talks about core designs, structured ways to do this.
Yeah, absolutely. It's not random. They highlight 3 common ones. These designs give you a kind of roadmap.
Okay, what's the first one?
The first is the explanatory sequential design. The name kind of gives it away. You start with the quantitative data collection and analysis first.
So maybe the big survey first, get the overall picture.
Exactly. You get your numbers, your trends. Then the qualitative phase follows, and you use things like interviews or focus groups specifically to help explain or dig deeper into those initial quantitative results.
Ah, okay. So maybe like one group scored way lower on satisfaction, and you use interviews to find out why that specific group feels that way.
Precisely. Quant first to find what's happening broadly, then qual second to explain why it's happening with that richer detail.
Got it. Quant, then qual for explanation. What's number 2?
Number 2, flicks it. It's the exploratory sequential design. Here, you start with the qualitative phase.
Okay, so interviews or observations first, maybe if you're exploring something new or not well understood.
Exactly that. You use qualitative methods to explore, generate ideas, maybe even develop a new theory, identify key themes or concepts you didn't know about before.
Right.
Based on those findings, the ones that emerge from the qualitative data, you then design and carry out a quantitative phase. Maybe you build a survey based on the interview themes to see how common those ideas are in a larger group.
Ah, okay. Qual first to explore and generate ideas, then quant second to test or generalize those ideas. This is super useful when you're in sort of uncharted territory.
You got it. You need to understand the landscape before you can really measure it effectively. Explore first, then measure.
Makes sense. And the third design?
The third is the concurrent design.
Concurrent, meaning happening at the same time.
That's exactly it. In this design, you collect both quantitative and qualitative data pretty much simultaneously, and crucially, you analyze them together. You're looking for points where the data converges or maybe contrasts right during the analysis phase.
So you could be running a big survey while you're also doing some in-depth interviews on the same topic.
Yes, precisely. The idea here is that both methods are considered equally important right from the start. They're providing parallel insights into the same research question at the same time. You get the numbers and the stories together and bring them into conversation during analysis.
Okay, so explanatory, quant, then qual, exploratory, qual, then quant, and concurrent, quant and qual together. These designs really show that mixed methods isn't just throwing things together, it's a strategic choice depending on what you want to find out.
Absolutely, and that strategy starts right with your research question. The guide makes a really critical point here.
Which is?
Your research question itself can't just be a quantitative question or just a qualitative question.
It has to signal that you need both.
Exactly. It needs to be framed in a way that demands both measurable data and insights into meaning or experience or perception. The guide gives some good examples.
Like what?
One is, how does application X affect students' achievement levels? That's the quantitative part. And their perceptions of motivation. That's the qualitative part.
Ah, okay. You can see it right there. Achievement levels you can measure, perceptions of motivation you need to explore through talk.
Yep. Another good one they mention. What is the relationship between the public perception, qualitative, of policy Y, and citizens' behavioral responses, quantitative?
Okay, so linking how people feel or think about something, the qualitative bit, with what they actually do, the quantitative bit.
Exactly. The key takeaway the guide really hammers this home is that your research question sets the entire stage. A good mixed methods question aims for both measurability, the quant, and meaning, the qual. If your question only needs one, well, maybe you don't need mixed methods.
That makes total sense. The question forces the approach, doesn't it? It's not just tacked on. Okay, so moving from the question to actually doing it, planning the data collection must get more complicated.
Oh, absolutely. It requires really careful thought. The guide emphasizes you need separate strategies for your quantitative collection and your qualitative collection, but crucially, they need to be complementary.
So not just doing double the work, but coordinating two different streams of work.
Right. You need to think about a few key things. First, timing, which we kind of touched on with the designs.
Right, simultaneous or sequential.
Exactly. Your design choice dictates this, and your plan needs to spell that out clearly. If it's explanatory sequential, your timeline needs to show the quant phase finishing before the qual phase even starts.
Okay. What else is critical in planning?
Resources. This is a big one. Let's be honest, mixed methods usually takes more time, more money, and more people power than a single method study.
Yeah, you can't really get around that.
No. So planning realistically for those extra resources right from the start is vital. Otherwise, you risk hitting walls later on, getting delayed, losing steam.
Good point.
Yeah.
What about ethics? I imagine that's especially key with qualitative data, talking to people in depth.
Very much so. The guide specifically flags ethical approval. It needs careful planning, especially for things like interviews. You need solid plans for getting informed consent, protecting participant privacy, managing sensitive data securely.
Right. You might need different consent forms, different ways of storing interview transcripts compared to anonymous survey data.
Exactly. It's all about respecting your participants, especially when you're gathering potentially more personal information. It's not an afterthought. It has to be baked into the plan.
So planning means timing, resources, ethics for both sides, making sure they fit together with the overall design.
Precisely. And that careful planning for collection leads right into the analysis. And this is where the guide points out a really common mistake people make.
Oh, yeah. What's the big pitfall in analysis?
Treating the two data types, the numbers and the stories, as totally separate things. They analyze the quantitative data, write that up. Then they analyze the qualitative themes, write that up. And they just present them side by side.
So it ends up feeling like two mini studies just stuck together, not one integrated whole.
That's exactly it. The guide really stresses how crucial integration is during analysis. A strong mixed method study isn't just about collecting different data. It's about making that data converge or overlap or compare meaningfully at some point. That's where the magic happens.
So you're not just reporting, here are the stats and here are the themes. You're maybe explaining the stats using the themes, or using the themes to figure out why the stats look that way.
Yes, exactly. And how you're going to integrate needs to be planned right back at the design stage. Are you going to, say, turn qualitative themes into codes you can count? Use interview quotes to illustrate a statistical finding? Use qualitative data to understand outliers in your quantitative data? That integration method is part of the study's blueprint.
Okay, so you plan the integration from the get-go, not just wing it at the end. That makes sense. And the reward for doing this integration well.
The guide calls it creating meta-inference. That's basically synthesizing the results from both data types to generate insights that are deeper, more original than either could have given you alone.
Meta-inference. I like that. It's that moment where the combination reveals something genuinely new. Okay, so who actually does this kind of research? Do you need to be a jack of all trades methodologically?
Well, the guide touches on this under research team and competencies. Ideally, yeah, it really helps if you have skills in both qualitative and quantitative approaches.
But what about solo researchers? Like students doing a thesis? That's common.
Very common. If you're working solo, the guide advises being realistic. Know your strengths, know your limitations. Maybe you design the study so the part you're strongest in takes the lead, but you still strategically incorporate the other method.
Or maybe team up if you can.
Absolutely. That's often the best route if it's feasible. Find collaborators with complementary skills. Someone great with stats teams up with someone skilled in interviewing and thematic analysis.
Makes sense. Divide and conquer.
And whether you're solo or in a team, the guide also mentions the practical side. Being comfortable with the right software tools is pretty important. Things like SPSS or R for the quant side, and maybe MAXQDA or NVivo for the qual side.
Right. So it takes conceptual planning, analytical chops, and often the right tools or team members. Okay, let's say you've navigated all that, you've done your study, you have these cool meta-inferences. How do you get this work published? Is it straightforward?
Not always. The guide notes that while mixed methods is definitely gaining respect, not all academic journals are equally, let's say, enthusiastic about these designs yet. Some might still heavily favor purely quantitative or purely qualitative work.
Good to know that up front. So what does the guide suggest for navigating publishing?
A few key tips. First, do your homework. Check the methodological preferences of journals you're targeting before you even think about submitting. See what kinds of studies they usually publish.
Right. Don't waste your time sending a complex mixed methods paper to a journal that only publishes, say, experimental psych studies.
Exactly. Second, They suggest citing other successful mixed methods studies from your own field in your paper.
To show it's a valid approach in your discipline.
Precisely. It shows editors and reviewers, hey, this approach belongs here, others are doing it. And finally, they stress having a really clear, systematic explanation in your methodology section. Don't just say, we used mixed methods.
You have to justify it.
Yes. Explain why your specific research question needed this integrated approach. Spell out your design and exactly how it helped you tackle the complexity of your question.
Makes sense. Justify the why you needed both numbers and stories for this particular puzzle. Okay, before we wrap up, the guide flags some common mistakes. What are the big pitfalls to avoid?
Yeah, knowing the potential traps is half the battle. The guide lists a few. The biggest one, which we've talked about quite a bit, is weak method integration.
The two studies stapled together problem.
Exactly. It just undermines the whole point. Another big one is having a research question that really only focuses on one method. If your core question could be fully answered just with surveys or just with interviews, then your mixed methods design feels weak, lacks that essential justification.
The question itself has to demand both approaches right from the start.
Then there's a practical one, lack of time planning. Seriously, these studies take longer, underestimating the time for collecting and integrating two different kinds of data that can lead to huge delays, frustration, even burnout.
So plan your time realistically, don't be overly optimistic.
Definitely not. And one more they highlight is overlooking conceptual alignment. This is subtle but important, especially in those sequential designs.
What does that mean exactly?
Okay, say you did interviews first, exploratory, and identified key themes about, workplace stress. Then you build a survey based on those themes. You have to make sure your survey questions accurately capture the concepts that came out of the interviews.
So if the survey questions don't really align with what people were talking about in the interviews, then the quant phase isn't actually testing or generalizing the qual findings properly.
Exactly. There's a disconnect. The insights from one stage have to genuinely and accurately inform the next stage. These mistakes really highlight just how important that careful, integrated planning is right from square one.
They really do. But like you said, being aware of them is a huge advantage.
Okay, so if this all sounds interesting, maybe even necessary for someone's research, where does the guide suggest starting if you're new to this?
They give some really practical first steps. First off, just build your basic knowledge. Read methodology books or systematic reviews specifically about mixed methods. Get comfortable with the language, the core ideas.
Learn the fundamentals before diving in. Right. Then look at published mixed methods studies in your own field. See how other researchers have actually used these designs to tackle questions similar to yours. How did they integrate? What challenges did they mention?
See it in action in your context.
Exactly. And maybe consider starting small. Try a little pilot study. It's a lower stakes way to test your approach, figure out the practical kinks of collecting and integrating different data types, and just build your confidence before you launch into a massive project.
Like a practice run. Smart.
Yeah. And finally, if you have a supervisor, like for a thesis or dissertation, talk to them a lot. Discuss your ideas, gauge their own experience with mixed methods, understand how much support they can actually provide.
Having a knowledgeable mentor could make a massive difference here.
Oh, absolutely invaluable.
Okay, well, we've covered a lot of ground. From defining mixed methods and why it's needed for complex questions, through the core designs, asking the right questions, planning, analysis, teams, publishing, avoiding mistakes, right up to how to get started. That was a really solid deep dive, all guided by that Beginner's Guide to Mixed Methods Research from Academic Practices.
Yeah, it really covers the essentials well, always emphasizing that integration and purpose.
It really does. And I liked how their conclusion put it. Mixed methods isn't about causing confusion by just mixing stuff together. It's really about achieving depth.
Exactly. It's not just about having two types of information side by side. It's about making them interact, complement each other, build something more comprehensive together.
That commitment to seeking deeper, more complete answers. That really feels like the heart of it. It's acknowledging that the really interesting questions often need us to look through more than one lens. Thanks for walking us through the key insights from that Academic Practices guide.
My pleasure.
And remember, everyone, you can find more from Academic Practices on Instagram and Twitter.
Yeah, they offer really accessible, practical advice, which is just what you need when you're tackling potentially complex methods like this.
It really is.
Yeah.
And for you, listening.
Yeah.
Maybe think about this. Mixed methods isn't just some fancy academic technique. It's kind of a mindset, right? A commitment to digging deeper. So think about a really complex problem you've encountered, maybe at work, in your community, maybe even understanding a personal challenge. How much of that problem could you describe using numbers or stats? How much needs stories, experiences, context?
And what would happen if you could truly bring both of those perspectives together? How might that fundamentally change how you see it, understand it, maybe even how you could address it?
It's about recognizing that sometimes the richest understanding comes from weaving together different ways of knowing.
Well said.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for joining us for this deep dive into mixed methods research. We really hope it sparked some ideas and maybe offered some clarity on what is truly a powerful approach for seeking deeper answers. Until next time.